My name is Percy Jackson.
So today we were going to talk about our theories on what was going to happen in season two, some of which have been confirmed already, correct, and others we don't know yet. I think I saw also we got a question about what we think the episodes would be broken down into.
Yeah, that was Issa.
Yeah, yeah. So let's start with the episode breakdown.
You fell in love with God? Like, like Jesus?
Because part of me was thinking about like, would them escaping, is it Yancey that he starts at in Sea of Monsters?
No.
No, no, Yancey's from the first one. I can't remember which school he's at in the second one.
I don't remember. I just remember that it was the school that Rick was definitely making, like, going after people he's run into that don't care about their students, like the school with like the rich kids, who all got to like do nothing and never get in trouble, and bully Tyson, who they had there on like scholarship, but they were like threatening to take it away.
Yeah.
And things like that, and like Tyson would cry about while they would bully him about his peanut butter sandwiches. But I don't remember the name of the school at all, just that obviously he hated it. And at the end of the season, the end of the year was when his, when the Canadians show up and destroy everything.
Yeah, so I think that, and then them getting to camp could take up a whole episode. I mean, was that where episode one ended? Was like the end of the Minotaur fight, they get to camp kind of thing? Yeah.
You're gonna need to be brave now.
Yeah, so I would guess that, and I will say that this is somewhat based on the stupid ass spoilers that I like saw enough of to know what they were. But I would guess that episode one will end with them arriving at camp when Tyson saves him, and Annabeth like lets him into camp and stuff, and then him like them finding out, or him finding out like what Tyson like really is, basically. That's like what I'm guessing is going to be episode one. And episode two would probably be
The chariot race.
Yeah, the chariot race, Tantalus. If they show, I hope they show like Chiron being gone, like him saying goodbye to them before leaving, that whole thing. The kids at camp bullying Tyson, him and Annabeth yelling at each other. And then, him leaving. That's one, I guess, not like a prediction, but it's more like a wondering, I guess is the best word for it, is like, so in the book version of when he leaves, Hermes doesn't tell him what's going on. Like, he doesn't tell him that it's Luke's ship. He just kind of tells him like, oh yeah, go on that ship over there, and then you'll figure stuff out, blah blah blah. Here's how you're gonna save your friend. You want to save your friend, right? And it gives him a bunch of stuff, and then they get on the ship, and they realize once they're on there, when they hear Luke, that it's Luke's ship. But this show sometimes changes things like that in different ways. Like in season one, they had like, they never saw Hermes in season one, just to start. And so Hermes helps them, like, and tells them about Krusty when they go to LA. And so they don't have to, they go into that knowing that it's a trap instead of, not. And so, I feel like the two options, there's many other options, but in my head there are two options, which is that either, Hermes either doesn't tell him, like in the book, and, manipulates him into going, or like basically like forcing him into going at that exact moment when he doesn't want to. Or the other option I feel like Hermes might do, because he's Hermes, is tell him, like, I helped you in Las Vegas, and so you have to do this for me, kind of thing. And like use the fact that he helped them and to get to LA and told them about Krusty as like forcing him to go when he wouldn't want to. And like maybe he does tell him that it's Luke's ship, but either way I feel like he might do something like that, like try to force him into going, because I'm like, I did this nice thing for you, now you have to like pay me back, kind of thing. So I don't know. We just know that they filmed that scene because Walker said so. And he just said that it was a long scene. He didn't say like anything else about it, obviously. But it would be a longer scene filming acting wise regardless, because it's a whole discussion about like, granted they don't have to introduce Hermes as much, because that scene in the original book is introducing him as a character. Yeah. But they might also want to talk about Luke, because that would definitely be the first time he would likely talk to him, since everything happened the summer before when Luke tried to kill him.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
So they would have things to discuss.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably where episode 2 ends.
Is him like them running onto the ship. I wonder if they're gonna bother with George and Martha.
I kind of hope so. Like, I don't know. I feel like they're cute and like funny. And I think they're funny because they give Hermes a attitude, and I really don't like him, and so it would be nice to watch them, like, his thing give him attitude the whole time. But it will be like, if they have time to do that, if it would, like, by time I mean like the special effects of it all, because it would probably be something where it would just be like voiceovers. And hopefully, unlike the Percy Jackson movies, it won't just be like weirdly racist jokes.
Yeah.
Like, that was really one of the really weird things about Sea of Monsters, that the animals that are supposed to be snakes had like the voices that sounded like people pretending to talk like black people if they weren't actual black people. It was really weird. I was like, this is very strange. And that was like the most unweird thing about that movie, because it's so crazy.
Yeah,
but
it's so off the rails.
Yeah, either way, episode 3, I am very sure, is them on his ship. Because I remember when they were filming that episode, they were around the time when they would be filming that episode, they were talking about the set, like, looking really cool and things like that. And they didn't say like where it was, but I was like, yeah, the set for his ship would likely look pretty cool, because they would have a chance to kind of like do whatever they want with that, like, whatever they imagined that sort of ship to look like. It could look like anything, and it's so creepy and weird, with like the humans that are walking around as just like monster food that don't know what they're doing, while they're practicing stabbing children at camp to death. Yeah. And so I'm sure that episode 3 will be them on Luke's ship, and the whole confrontation stuff with him while they're there, and then TYSON helping them get away. Yeah.
So one of our predictions with that has been, and we feel like it's supported just by the idea that they've introduced a character, Allison, is that they are going to spend more time like introducing us to Luke on his ship, like just have scenes of him. And yeah, them having a whole other character that seems to be on his side kind of gives us that idea.
Yeah. And like, one of the things I made notes about like, I guess, predictions that we'll go into after we're done with going through the episodes are like the different trios on like both sides that they're kind of setting up to be probably opposites of each other. And so, but with that though, I feel like they're gonna show more of Luke being like a quote unquote leader, or a dastardly person at least, and like what that would be like for people, what he's like, or just things involving him. beyond the like flashbacks and stuff too. But speaking of that, episode 4 is like the what in my mind I'm calling that like the Big Daddy episode, because that's the one the cast keeps talking about is their favorite one, because that's the episode that ends, I'm very sure, with Scylla and Charybdis, because they keep talking about how that episode is like huge, like cinematic wise. That's like the phrasing that all of them use when they talk about it. And so I'm sure episode 4 is when they do Monster Donut, which Rick has already mentioned to look in the background, and he just said 2 words, Monster Donut, and I was like, okay, thanks. And so that is like one of the like funny parts of that book, when when Percy's like, hey Tyson, why don't you go try to find some donuts to try to like talk to Annabeth alone, and he comes back 3 minutes later and he's like, I have your donuts, and Percy's like, what? And then he's like just letting him eat it, and Annabeth's like, they could be poison, and he's like, whatever, just let him eat his goddamn donuts. Like, everything is going wrong. Tyson can eat some donuts. It'll be fine. But anyway, that episode I'm pretty sure is when they probably run into Clarisse for the first time, and that whole thing happens, where they actually fight, and then get on her ship, and then the ship ends up blowing up with Scylla and Charybdis happening at the same time as God intended. And I think that when I said like flashbacks, I think that the first episode with flashbacks is going to be that one, with the flashbacks with like Thalia and Luke and stuff, because that was when Thalia was cast. And they said that, just from like the other cast interviews, they said that they had them all read the 4th episode like together for the first time during like their table read when they were doing like episode 3, and that's where they like posted pictures of Tamara on set with them and things like that, like doing like the table read with the rest of them. And so that's like an educated guess. That would make sense, because the episode after they bring up Luke, and Luke is like, Thalia would be ashamed of you, or whatever stupid stuff he says about Thalia, and that would just bring that stuff up to your mind, or to the character's mind, and also our minds as the audience to want to see it. And so, especially because part of that episode is Annabeth still being afraid of Tyson, and then Tyson seemingly dying at the end of that episode. It makes sense to bring up like why she has these like irrational fears with Cyclops in the first place, which are all those flashbacks. And I would guess that episode 5 will be when they go to Circe or Cece's island, and however that's depicted. It does make, somebody brought this up the other day in some video I saw somewhere, that it's exciting to think about how they're going to show Circe because of how well they did Medusa. And I'm like, that's actually a really good point, that I'm excited to see how they depict her, because there's so many wild depictions of her all over the place. Some of them, she's like an evil bitch who just hates everybody and kills people and takes names. And then other versions of her, she's like the book that we're reading now. She's much more of like a real person, that has been through like some stuff and does what she does on her island to protect herself. And like, I will say, like, the book version of Circe feels more like on that side of even though she's doing stuff against Percy and he's like not wanting, he's like proving her whole thing like incorrect by like not wanting to do that. It's also a thing of, you can see that, you know, something happened to make her want to do that to like every man that she runs into for many generations of people. It's just that our tiny little child is a tiny little child, and he's very upset during that episode.
We do know they're gonna shoot the guinea pig sequence, because Walker talked about spending 3 hours with his guinea pig.
And I'm pretty sure they did that last because it involves like live animals. I would also do that last if I had the choice, just in case something goes wrong, it doesn't mess up every other episode you're trying to film after that moment. But yeah,
They'll
and then
probably have an Annabeth glow up scene too.
yeah, of course. And then episode 6 is probably going to be the mega siren scene, which everyone is going to like super fixate on in a way that's probably going to annoy me because of just, I don't know, that scene. I talked about it when we read it last summer. People romanticize it, and I think that's weird because it's like a nice scene of them, of like Percy trying to help her, but it's not like a shippy like scene necessarily.
Yeah.
Because they're not exactly like, it's not how people really I was surprised by it when I read it. I was like, I thought this would be more like a bonding scene than it actually is. But either way, that's likely going to be in that episode. And that's also the episode when Percy has the nightmare where he sees Thalia, but he doesn't know that it's Thalia.
Yeah.
And they're standing in front of like the coffin, their sarcophagus or whatever, and all that kind of creepy stuff. And they have that whole talk at the after the, honestly, I think the most important part of the siren scene is the talk they have afterwards, where Annabeth is like, wouldn't you want to like completely redo the entire world if you had the chance? And he's like, no,
Yeah.
absolutely not, goodbye. Like, that is not something that I would ever want to do. So it'll be really interesting. The next episode after that, the 7th episode, would likely be when they get to Polyphemus' island. But considering that, you know, Arian and Dior are both series regulars of this season, and they've mentioned doing scenes together, there's likely going to be scenes with the two of them, and hopefully TYSON, on the island.
Yes.
Intermixed with Percy and Annabeth, like severe angst at the same time, because their storyline with the, you know, the siren scene and all that stuff probably won't take enough to take like an entire episode.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that they're going to be showing that stuff to like get us ready for whatever is going to happen, like that they don't know about. And it would be kind of fun for them to show us that TYSON is alive before they realize that TYSON is alive.
Yeah.
Just for like the kids who haven't read the books yet, so that they will stop being sad. and like even me, I'll be sad because I just love TYSON. Even though I know he's still alive, I'll still be sad. And then the 7th episode will probably be everything that happens on Polyphemus' island. It'll be really interesting to see how they decide to depict that. And because there's so many things that they could expand on or change or whatever. And then the last episode is when Luke tries to kill them all. And he exposes Luke to camp, and Chiron helps him get back home to camp. And then Thalia comes back. And so I'm guessing that's where all of that stuff happens. Like, I obviously stopped talking about the flashbacks that we know are in multiple episodes.
Yeah, and I'm guessing there'll be multiple cutaways to like Grover in Percy's dreams.
Yeah, they've said that they filmed multiple scenes together of just the two of them in like his dreams just talking. And I'm sure that as like things come up during those episodes, that they show like flashbacks that kind of expand on whatever they're feeling at the time.
Yeah.
To like bring that kind of stuff up, especially when they're like, there's some like more serious talks at certain parts during those episodes, like when Percy's asking Annabeth like, why do the gods want to kill me? And when he's all sad about TYSON dying or thinking that he's dead, and you know, things like that. Those things just kind of naturally come up, and it will give them an easy way to show whatever they're going to show in those flashbacks. But we've always said this about that, but those flashbacks are going to kill anybody who likes Luke. Because it just is. Like, when you when you have like the end of the season being him like laughing about, like literally laughing about killing Percy and killing Grover and Annabeth too. He's just laughing about it in that scene. And Percy doesn't even, they're not even fighting over, and like the thing about that fight I always remember is that he's not even fighting because he has to. He's just mad that he gave the Golden Fleece to Clarisse. He thinks that they're going to get it back, but he's still, like, Percy just baits him by making fun of him for 10 seconds and being like, oh, do you think you can't beat me? And Luke just, like, does all of that. There isn't even an actual reason. Like, at least in, like, the first season, when at the end of the finale fight scene, there's a reason for, like, why they're doing that. Like, if Percy tells Camp about what he's doing, then Luke can't do what he's been doing all this time. He has to then leave, and everybody will know what's going on now sooner than he wanted to, which is what happens. But he has a reason for why he's fighting Percy in that moment, because he's trying to stop him from telling anybody, or at least trying to get him to join his side, or stop him from telling anyone by killing him. and so there's a reason for why they're fighting, but at the end of this season, there is no real reason. He's just doing it because it's fun. And so whatever they show, like, with his character in the past will be quite interesting. Especially since Walker's mentioned a couple times that the ending of it matches, like, the much more darker book that is Titan's Curse, which I assumed they would do that, to, like, make it all, like, blend together. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there to go into, because there's a lot of stuff that we don't really know. And there's a lot of things that we can just make educated guesses on. Because we seem to be, like, I don't want to say, like, correct, because it's not like a, it's not like a math test.
Yeah.
But we do seem to be, like, on the same wavelength of the people that are making the show. Because a lot of the stuff that we say are things that they say too. And it's like, oh, that's nice. It's always nice to know that you're not just talking incessantly for all this time and you're going to be wrong about absolutely everything. Like, they like to move things around sometimes in little ways. And so I'm sure there are going to be things like that during this season, just like there was in season 1. Beyond, like, the entirely new character that they added in. And Chris Rodriguez being a bigger role than he was in the books, I think, since they cast him with an actor that is, like, I don't know, he's in things on his own, like, acting more than Andrew Alvarez was. And so I don't think they would do that if it wasn't worth it to have him on there. Our baby children trio, obviously, is Percy and Annabeth and Grover.
Yeah.
And they're introducing, like, basically this trio of Luke and Chris Rodriguez and Allison, the brand new character that is just endlessly interesting because she's brand new. And so no one will ever know a single thing that she's going to do. And that's really fun and exciting in something like this, when we usually have some idea of what they're doing all the time. And I was just thinking about it yesterday when I was doing these notes, that they're kind of like, every member is kind of like the polar opposite of, like, our children. Like, Percy is a very good, like, hardworking, if you put in the work and I can trust you, I'll basically do whatever for you. And the opposite of that would be Luke, who will sell anybody in any way to literally sell if you're in Battle of the Labyrinth to get what he wants. But overall, he doesn't really have real loyalty. The only loyalty he has is to himself. And that's it. Like, that's where Luke's loyalties really lies, is to what he wants. And so he's kind of the opposite of Percy in every possible way. And then you have a character like Chris Rodriguez, who is very much the opposite of Grover in the same way, because Grover is an extremely loyal person too, that is very empathetic, but is also, like, will be there with you till, like, the very end. And Chris Rodriguez is that empathetic, caring person, but he also, like, leaves camp and joins Luke's side.
Yeah.
And so that's very much like the opposite of Grover. Grover would never do that. Like, would never even think about possibly joining somebody that's trying to take out camp. Because that's one of those things when reading the books that I just realized, like, every book, Luke's plan is exactly the same. It's kill everybody at camp.
Yeah.
And then afterwards we can kill the gods. If you did want to just, like, take out the gods, you would just go for the gods. You would maybe try to get everyone at camp on your side, but, like, killing them all doesn't exactly make sense.
Yeah.
Like, because they're all dead then. Like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And even him saying, like, oh, they're the position of powers of the gods on earth. No, they're not. They're just their children. The position of power that the gods have on earth is their literal powers. Poseidon isn't powerful because Percy is alive. Poseidon is powerful because he's the god of the fucking ocean.
Yeah.
Like, killing their children doesn't do anything. That's just malarkey that Kronos told him, and he just went with it. But because then he gets to kill anybody that doesn't agree with him. But either way, like, that's ridiculous. And so, and like, so Chris joining him and, like, watching him attack people at camp when he spent the rest of his life there, is very much the opposite of somebody like Grover that is a literal, like, his job title is being a protector and is always trying to help new demigods and make sure that they're okay and that they're safe, getting to camp. And here's Chris going out there doing the polar opposite. That's really nice of you, dude. It's okay. You figure it out pretty quickly. And you're being manipulated. I know that you are. And so it's okay. I forgive you. But he's still, like, kind of that person that has betrayed them all in this way. And I'm guessing, obviously we don't know about Allison, but this is just an educated guess for me because she is the other girl, that the guesses that I have about Allison is there's a million different things. Obviously she could literally do anything. Yeah. But part of me wonders is if she's kind of the opposite of what Annabeth is like, where that she's on Luke's side and then changes her mind. Because Annabeth, takes a really long time to get there because of all of her stuff, all of her trauma stuff. And it could not be that. She could just be somebody who's on Luke's side and just, like, doesn't care about anyone or anything or whatever in that way. But it does make me wonder about her, if she's somebody that notices weird stuff or has questions about things that can kind of, like, help prompt the audience.
Yeah, the only character write-up they've given was she was old enough that she's, like, graduated from camp, was kind of what they said. So, older teenager, I would think, like, 18, 19, and doesn't seem to have any ties to anybody, so...
At least not that we know of. And, like, part of it, too, that I was wondering, like, the idea of her being, like, the opposite side of Annabeth almost is, like, is she, like, somebody who's, like, undercover or something? Like, is she spying on people at camp? Like, still being around without them knowing that she's on Luke's side? Is she, like, watching other people? Because the first description of her was that she's somebody that's in, like, the regular world, like, the human world. And so I'm like, is she, like, watching their loved ones that are just normal people like Sally and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Because, or what? Like, or is she just, I don't know. She could be doing anything. But it's just, those things are interesting things to, like, think about in that sort of a way. I remember, like, whenever it was, well, I think it was last summer around this time, when we heard that they were going to have this brand new character in the second season. I remember at that time that Mason here on TikTok said that he hoped that she would be unclaimed. Like, that she wouldn't know who her parent was. And I like that idea. I want that to be the thing.
Yeah, I could see that working.
I just like the idea of them introducing, a character very early on like this in the second season that is somebody that got through all of camp without her godly parent ever saying anything. If she does have a parent, I hope it's something like Ethan Nakamura situation where it's a parent that like doesn't have a cabin at camp or something, because she's very much like it feels like it's one of those, because she's very like jaded. Kind of the way that they described her is like somebody who isn't at camp anymore and doesn't want to be around it because she feels like she doesn't really like fit in there. And so that's the kind of people that I would imagine. And it's just like smart for the show to introduce people like that in the second season before they really like need them, so that when other things happen later on, they don't have to work as hard to like introduce this idea. If they introduce people like her now in the second season, when Ethan shows up in season 4, you already know about this, and they don't have to like introduce the entire concept of somebody like him like they do in the 4th book. And so she's just always very interesting because we don't know anything about her, but it's just really fun that they decided to add a new character in like this. And it's also one of those things of like, are they going to add in new characters in other seasons? We don't know. They could. It'd be fun. I think all of that is fun. Because I like creativity. And so I'm fine with them changing stuff and doing different things. Even if I end up watching it and I don't like it, I like that they're like trying. That in the second season they're already adding in completely new characters that never existed, instead of just doing the story that they have. And this book is one where they can do that kind of stuff, because the big daddy shit in like every other book that starts happening, like plot-wise and character development-wise, hasn't happened yet. This book is like the setup for a lot of that stuff. And so they have the time to add somebody in like her and see what she wants to do, I guess. I will say, like, the one guess I have about Chris Rodriguez, like the thing that just like popped in my head one day, is I also, maybe he'll try to recruit Clarisse onto Luke's side, because one of the things I will say, like, people talk, I love every time somebody talks about the ending, like the big Luke reveal in the TV show / book, but especially the TV show version. Even if they don't agree with what I think, it's always really interesting to think about it. But one of the things they changed in that scene, that I said this last year when we originally talked about it, and I still agree, I really like the ending scene, the way that they changed it to him trying to recruit Percy at first, and then when the recruitment stuff, and like granted, he's trying to recruit him to shove him into a sarcophagus and lock him and never let him out.
Yeah.
But like that's what he's trying to recruit him in, but he's trying to get him to go through the portal with him so that he can do that to him before he realizes what's really happening. But he's still trying to recruit him. And so the fact that Luke is sitting there being like, even though I tried to pull you into hell, I'm still your friend, Percy. And sorry for trying to kill Grover. I just didn't realize you were going to give the shoes to him. And like, we just have to escape camp. And they're always trying to control us here, when Percy's like, what are you talking about? Like, he just got back to camp. He loves camp. He doesn't want to leave. Camp is like the one place that Percy doesn't want to leave. And everything he says, like, as that scene goes on, Walker does such a good job of just looking so like freaked out and also really sad at the same time, because it just gets worse as the scene goes on. Like, every single sentence Luke says just gets progressively worse and worse and worse the more he talks, to the point that, the big moment in it where Percy accidentally hurts him and he turns around and hits him on purpose and is about to stab him before Annabeth throws her knife at his fucking head. And it's like, fuck you. Like, we're done watching you, like, literally, like, break our little hearts into 10,000 pieces. I'm going to throw this at your head so that you don't kill Percy. But either way, like, the fact that he does that makes everything way more insidious, because those, like, things that Luke was thinking are things that just, like, stay in your head when people are trying to manipulate you. And it is, it makes it fun, like, in the TV show world, that part of the reason why Percy is likely, like, knows that he doesn't want anything to do with Luke is because of how he talked to him and tried to convince him to do the things that he was going to do. Like, one of the things I do wonder now about season 2 is that because he tried to recruit him, will Percy, like, put it together when he sees, like, the sarcophagus on the ship and in his dreams that, like, that Luke was going to try to get him to go in there?
Maybe.
Especially since the boat is called Princess Andromeda, which has to do with Perseus, and it's a boat. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like, are they going to have him put those things together? They could. It would make it more clear to the audience. And so Percy's smart enough to figure that stuff out if they, like, kind of allow him to say those things out loud. And he could. And so it just, the fact that he's, like, it was more of, like, a discussion instead of the book just being like, I'm going to kill you, okay, bye. The fact that it was more of, like, a weird discussion of horribleness means that he knows things or could put things together that Percy in the books that was just, like, poisoned pretty much right away, didn't have time to figure out. And because Annabeth is there too. And so that going into, like, Chris and Clarisse, it's like, well, Luke tries to recruit people. He does in the books. He tries to recruit Annabeth. He tries to recruit pretty much anybody that will, like, listen to him. But Clarisse is somebody that, at least in the books, we don't know that he ever tries. And, like, she doesn't really ever, Clarisse is not somebody that, like, ever falls for his bullshit, for lack of a better word. And so he wouldn't, like, it wouldn't work if he tried. But since they're doing more with her character in this show, in the show, they could add that in of, like, Chris wanting to recruit her and trying to convince her to join him instead of staying at camp. And especially considering what's going on with Clarisse in that book, with her quest, quote unquote, her quest, that isn't really her quest. Like, she knows it's not really her quest, but she doesn't even want to go on it, at least if they keep that, like, consistent, and I'm sure it will, because Clarisse wouldn't want to leave camp when everybody's getting attacked all the time. She's obviously very unhappy about the quest that she's even being forced to be on. In the TV show, we've already seen, like, little clips of her and Percy actually, like, full-on fighting, and things like that. And so there's obvious, like, anger there. And so that would be kind of, like, the perfect time for somebody to pop up and be like, join us instead. And I just wonder about it because it sets up the stuff that goes on between her and Chris in the next 2 books after that pretty well. If they show that they have some sort of a, like, relationship in some way, they know each other or they trust each other, it just gives her more things to work with and than you get in the books, when everything is always through, like, Percy's point of view, and so we don't get to know too much about what she's doing until after it's already over. Yeah. And then the other thing with Clarisse is Ares. That's, like, the thing I've always been the most consistent on. Like, this is, like, over a year that I've been saying this, that I want them to have Percy see Ares being an abusive little fuck to Clarisse, because it's kind of like a duo of, like, character development in a way, almost like 3 of them if they have Annabeth see him, like, noticing it or, like, see his reaction to it or something too. But even just the 2 of them, it would be kind of like, it's a potential to be, like, both of them getting characterization at the same time, that you understand more about Clarisse and it humanizes her a lot. Yeah. And then it also shows you what a horrible person Ares is, and that it was great that 12-year-old Percy embarrassed him and made him feel stupid and all that kind of stuff. But and then it also says it would also put that stuff about Percy's past out there too, because that's one of those things. Like, yes, I do want them to make it more clear how horrible Gabe actually was, but they can do it in a way that doesn't make Walker film scenes over and over again of an adult screaming at him. That's not necessary. And him watching Ares say, like, you know, threatening to like hit Clarisse like he does in the book, even though he's not physically there, is something that would be very easy for them to show the reaction on his face, and that would be enough. You don't actually have to show like Gabe doing anything to him in order to show like his response to it, because it's just one of those things that like that's the easiest way you make friends that you know understand your life when you're a kid growing up going through that. Because if they like notice your parent looking at you or talking to you a certain way, you're just like, oh, you get this. And they just kind of like stick around a little bit longer just to make sure everything's okay. Rick did say in one of the 20th anniversary things was Rick answering a bunch of questions. And one of the things he said in there was one of his regrets was to not explore Clarisse more. And that's definitely why she's a main character in this season. And I really hope that they do show us her and like Chris Rodriguez and Titan's Curse, because when he shows up at her mom's is during the course of that book. That's one of those things I like to remind people of who like Luke. Like, do you guys realize, and you don't, because you think about those things as like opposite, like not happening at the same time, but they were happening at the same time. Like Luke in Titan's Curse is physically and mentally and emotionally torturing Annabeth while he is also sending Chris Rodriguez into the maze while he's going crazy and losing his mind in there. Those are happening at the same time. Like that's what he's doing at that point in that book. When he's not torturing Annabeth, he's sending his best, quote unquote, best friend out there into the maze by himself, knowing that he's going to go crazy in there so that he can find an easier way of getting through faster.
Yeah.
Like they're already like, and just to like another like reminder about that whole thing, is that the entire reason why Luke is trying to go into the labyrinth is so he can figure out a way to get through it so he can kill everyone at camp.
Yeah, he wants a way in camp.
So like in Titan's Curse, when Annabeth at the end of the book is like defending him and things like that, during the course of that book, he is already planning how to get through camp so he can murder everyone. Like, Jesus Christ. So yeah, I do think that, so it would be, I just hope they add more with Clarisse. I know they're going to add more with Ares, because like, what's his name? I can never remember people's names off the top of my head.
Yeah, I don't remember. Adam Copeland?
Yeah. He's mentioned that like and there was an interview of him recently where he was like, where they were like, oh, are you like Ares as a father? And he's like, no, absolutely not. Never. Never. and like in the interviewer was just like, oh, because there's, you know, somebody that doesn't know that much about Greek mythology just knows of Ares. And he was like, I would never treat my children like that. And so by that point, he would have, like, he hadn't filmed his parts in season 2 yet, primarily because he, like, broke his foot doing wrestling. And so he would have to, like, wait until later on in the season to film his stuff anyway, because he would have to be able to walk for that. And, like, the interview was him basically talking about being excited about going back to do it and stuff. But he hadn't done it yet, but he has definitely by now, obviously. But, yeah. They're definitely going to go with that. And the other thing with that whole thing, too, is that if you're going to talk about abusive dads that are also gods, Zeus is in this season. And he was not in the Sea of Monsters book at all.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that he is... I mean, the obvious choice for that, I would think, was that he's in the flashback scenes. With Luke and Thalia, and especially with Thalia.
Maybe the big moment, like it's hard to imagine him being there for anything other than the big moment where she needs to be turned.
Yeah, I do wonder. It really does like one of the things with the flashback scenes is that I think is like never-endingly like interesting to think about is that there's a lot of things that they could use the flashback scenes to like explain to the audience and like set up story-wise. The things that I think is so interesting with the flashbacks is there's just so many different things that they could like set up that it's hard to know like what they'll show. Like with Zeus, they could very obviously show the flashback of Zeus like showing up. I don't like, at least I don't know. In the book version, it doesn't seem like he's actually physically there, but he could have been when he like turns her into a tree. But it could be that, but it also could be like her just being frustrated with him for not being around, because Thalia's backstory is that her mom is an alcoholic and was stuck in addiction, and she ran away from home when she was pretty young and like living in a cave for like a year or something before anything actually happened, or before she like met up with Luke and things like that. And so they could be doing something like yeah, anyway, it's like, it's just a thing that they could show that kind of stuff of him being around and not really helping her, or her being frustrated with him, especially if they do include scenes of Luke with Hermes at all. And him being mad at his dad, that it would kind of show like that bond that they have of them being angry. And Thalia's whole thing, like Thalia's characterization wrapped up in like a very like simplistic way, is she's somebody who's really angry and like shows that anger a lot. And the actor that they got to play her does a really good job of that in other roles, of like clips that I've seen of her in other roles. So I know that she can pull that off really well. And so it's like they could show just the ending scene of her, but they also, I almost hope that it's the other scenes of her interacting with Zeus and him not really helping her, and her just being like, what is the point of you being the most powerful god if you're not going to help me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but you were going to say about the 20th anniversary stuff?
Just on, you know, like the kids being good experts of their characters. Walker, it's like a joke that Rick made. Walker has read the books more times than Rick even has.
Yeah, I know. When there's a video of Rick on the official Percy account from the 20th anniversary last weekend, where he is talking about the 3 kids and says just like really sweet things about all 3 of them. And the thing he said about Walker was that he's really intense.
I think the thing that really struck me is his laser focus. I mean, he is so dedicated. He has this sense of professionalism and this natural talent that's really rare. He is a super fan of the books. He, I think it's fair to say, has read them more times than I have.
And I like sent that to her, and I was like, that's why he says the same things about Percy as me, because he's really intense about Percy Jackson. Because I'm just like, yeah, don't you have to be a really intense person if you're like Percy? I feel like you have to be. Like, he makes
Pretty
jokes
much.
and stuff, but he's an intense little child. That's why he reminds me so much of myself. One thing I was thinking about was Walker said in an interview that more than one person is going to be wearing a wedding dress and at Polyphemus's island, and I will like literally give them money if they put Tyson in a wedding dress.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I just want to see Tyson in a wedding dress. I want them to show up on Polyphemus's island, and Tyson and Clarisse and Grover are all wearing wedding dresses to fake out Polyphemus.
Yeah.
That would be the best. Because I'm just picturing Tyson being so like Percy finding out that Tyson's alive by seeing him wearing a wedding dress.
Yeah.
And being like, brother, and running to him to give him a hug or something. I'm also like very excited about seeing Percy as like a older brother.
Yes.
That's how they describe it, but that's pretty much the dynamic there, is him being an older brother with Tyson. It's very sweet in the books how he like tries to take care of him and help him, and that whole book is him just yelling at people that are mean to him, basically, which is everyone but him, basically. And that's one of my favorite storylines about Sea of Monsters overall, is Tyson, especially because it's Rick Riordan throwing like lots of shade at Odysseus.
Yeah.
by being like, what is wrong with you? Like, why you like this? And like, why are you doing this? And just showing that in that version, the original Odyssey, like, they don't really talk too much about the Cyclops, and that the Cyclops are just like normal, they're just normal creatures that are just on their island hanging out. And then even if Odysseus shows up and is like, it's just funny that like the storyline is basically Odysseus is in his house and is like waiting for him to come back.
Yeah.
And he comes back. And it's like presented as like, well, at least I like waited for you to come back, and I didn't just steal your stuff without asking. I like waited to ask for your.
Already started digging into his food.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm waiting and ask your permission, right? Doesn't that mean I'm a nice person? It's like, you broke into his house.
Yep.
Like, you broke into his house and on his home in his island that he doesn't even know anyone else is there. If you really wanted to like come and you would just come and like found him. And like not done anything until you actually found him, instead of doing that kind of stuff. And so
yeah, it's because Odysseus comes in with the most colonizer mindset ever, which is like, these people don't seem to be very civilized. They don't live close to one another. They don't seem to interact with one another. The land isn't plowed the way that we plow land, so they must not be working on it, even though they're clearly agrarian with like how he has like sheep and stuff, like there's some order to what they're doing anyways. So Odysseus comes in like, I'm gonna teach them about Xenia, and so I'm your guest. Here I am, welcome me.
Yeah, like, I am here as a white man to teach you how to live your life, because that's something that you definitely need. You definitely need to learn from me how to live your life, a complete stranger who you've never met before and has no idea who you are. But I'm gonna then get upset at you because you don't do exactly what I think is the best thing to do, and then I'm forced to kill you. It's like, okay. That's why I'm glad that Poseidon just like stalks him for the entirety of the Odyssey and is like, oh, you hurt my son? Like, let me just destroy your entire life.
Yep.
That's fair. Because like, you're doing that most of the time. When people do stuff like that, they get zero consequences. They just do it and they're gone. But Odysseus even doxes himself. and that's like my favorite thing from your videos that you did, like summing up all of the different myths, was when you said that he doxes himself and then leaves.
Yes.
Once they get to the ship, Odysseus decides to yell, "You really thought you had us, didn't you, Cyclops?" And Polyphemus grabs a rock and he throws it towards the ship, but he just barely misses it. And the rest of the men are like, "Why are you doing this, Odysseus?" They get a little bit further away, and then Odysseus shouts, "If anyone asks who did this to you, Cyclops, remember that Odysseus, the city sacker, son of Laertes, from Ithaca, was the one who did." He like told him his exact address. He doxed himself.
And I'm like, he might as well have just pulled out like Google Maps, like a map from his back pocket, and like throw it at Poseidon's head and been like, "Find me here later," and then like just leave. I feel like that storyline, the TYSON storyline, is going to be one that makes people, that is going to be really fun to like watch. It is going to be really interesting, especially since Annabeth is black. It makes everything much more interesting. To have Annabeth be black makes everything about Annabeth better. But it also makes that storyline really interesting to show that, like, the thing I've like said when we did Sea of Monsters last year was that trauma makes you stupid. Trauma can make you do things that you normally would never ever do, and you end up doing stuff and you're like, you don't even realize that you're doing it when you're doing it, and then somebody finally points it out to you and you're like, why am I doing that? This is not something that I actually agree with, that I would never actually usually do, but I've somehow done this because something in my past scared me so much that I'm just doing these things that I would be mad at if anyone else was doing it but me. And so, like, Annabeth is one of those where she is like the last person, especially as being somebody who is dark-skinned black woman, or girl in this case, that would ever like be, you would not think that she would be the person that would be like kind of prejudging somebody purely based on what they look like. But in this case, she ends up doing that stuff, and it's all Luke's fault.
Yeah.
Like, it's all his fault for traumatizing her in that way when she was a 7-year-old little baby child, because he wanted to, whatever he wanted to do, show off and be an idiot in the past. And so he like forced that situation. And but either way, that's such an interesting story, especially because of those stupid spoilers that I wish that I didn't know about. We know that they have a scene where Percy is like asking her, like, why didn't you try to like talk to me in the year between, like, when it comes to like the books, especially because the years that it came out, like, social media wasn't a thing at all really then. We had like really. MySpace and like we had MySpace and like message boards, but like horrible chat rooms like AOL Instant Messenger or whatever, but it wasn't as easy to like talk. You had phones, but they didn't even have cameras on them. It would be different for Percy to never hear from Annabeth for an entire like year, basically, after everything they went through at camp. It would be weird that he would never hear from her when she could like contact him on 17 different apps, or email him, or call him, or text him, or a million other things. And so I like that they added in that, like, a scene that I shouldn't know about, but I do already, that he asked her, like, why didn't you talk to me that this whole year? And it does make it makes the storyline with Tyson and Annabeth more interesting, because from the start she's like, who is this person that is around you? I don't know this person. I don't trust this person, like, just because it's somebody that I don't know, that is friends with you during this time when I was not around. And so it automatically kind of puts them on like the wrong foot in that way. And so it just makes her dislike for him even worse. I will say that in one of the interviews, Walker mentioned that the very first scene of the everything is like Sally being really sweet with Tyson, the way that she was like that with him. And I was like, oh my goodness. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I'm glad we get to see some more Sally.
Yeah, and he mentioned in that interview that like when he gets to camp, he like has to learn that he has to do that for Tyson, that he has to like take care of him. And I'm like, that's actually a really good point for like Percy's character, is that like name somebody who was watching out for Percy growing up.
Oh.
Like nobody. Like nobody. Like and I say this as someone who obviously loves Sally, because we just were talking about how great Sally is, but it's just the truth. He had to go away. She had to send him off to school. We all know about that. But because of that, he didn't really have somebody like watching out for him. Even when he was around her, Gabe was always around, which, definitely lessens being able to watch out for him when somebody's abusing him the whole time. She felt like she had to do that. But either way, that was the situation. And so it wouldn't occur to him in the same way it might other people, that like, Tyson is this sweet, like innocently minded person and sweet baby child, and that when he goes to camp and he doesn't know what he's doing or where he's going, and people at camp don't like him, and even before he finds out that Percy is his brother and everything, like, he's there because of Percy, and it's like, oh, I'm supposed to help take care of you and help you, because he's, he doesn't have any other siblings, and he didn't have anyone doing that kind of stuff for him in his day-to-day life growing up. And so he would probably need help to make somebody realize that. And then from that moment forward would be like the best caretaker in the entire world. He thinks, like, that's honestly like the whole Percy and Tyson story. I'm going to have like 75 breakdowns about how sweet it is while we watch the show. But one of the things that's so sweet about it is it's like the same thing with Percy in Titan's Curse, how he like just adopts the like super powerful sea cow because he just is nice, and he just rescues Bessie, not having any idea that she means anything at all. He just does that because that's what he does to everybody, every like sea creature that needs help, he's just going to go help it. He's not doing it for like ulterior motives or anything. He just is nice. And it actually, one of the things that actually like pays off with him being nice is the fact that Bessie is now his BFF in that book and just follows him around asking him if he's okay. and then is very much on his side and everything. But in the same way in Sea of Monsters, like in the beginning of Sea of Monsters, he doesn't know that TYSON is anything. He just thinks that TYSON is a homeless kid at school that doesn't have anyone to help him, or doesn't have anybody helping take care of him. And he's like, hey mom, can we adopt this homeless kid at my school that everybody is bullying? And like, especially if they keep it similar to how the book is, the entire school is like bullying him because he's nice to TYSON. Because TYSON is his friend, everyone else at school is bullying Percy just because he's being nice to the most unpopular kid at school. And so he's doing all of that and gets in an argument with Annabeth over TYSON and brings him to camp with him. And when they're at camp and the bull is like attacking, he's telling TYSON to leave and things like that because he doesn't want him to get hurt. He's doing all of that stuff when he has no idea that TYSON is anything special or interesting. He has no idea that he's his brother at all. Yeah. He has no clue. He's just doing that stuff because he's a nice person. And he wants to, because he just wants to help him. He sees he's somebody who's homeless, who doesn't have anybody or anything, and he wants to help. And like, that's what Percy would do after all those years at school, being, left behind by literally everybody. He would want to, when you have that kind of thing happening, especially when you're also poor, and Sally and him are definitely poor too, you want to help other people that are just as poor as you were, or even more poor, because you know what it's like. It sucks. And that's definitely, it's just one of those sweet things and it's also very sweet at the end of the book when you realize that TYSON already knew that he was his brother, and was just like, yeah, I knew that you would take care of me. So Dad sent me to you because he knew that you would love me and take care of me. And Percy's like, what? And it's just a really sweet scene. It's like, yeah, I knew that you were my brother, and I knew that you were a good person because you're my brother. And so I just went to find you. And it's just one of those sweet things that they both just kind of somehow knew that the other one was very sweet and would do whatever. Especially because Percy does have to fight a lot of people in that book to protect TYSON. It's going to be really interesting. Like, who knows what's going to be happening in the world? Maybe we're going to be at war with like the moon by the time the show actually airs. But having an entire storyline about a character like TYSON looking different from everybody else, but still being a good person, and having the main character of the show literally fight people, like not only just argue with Annabeth, but like we know he gets in a literal fight with Clarisse, and like from the videos of them filming that scene when that happens, when she shows up, and we can imagine that the Hydra stuff happens during that, or like right before that, basically. Like him and TYSON are sleeping, or like laying down at least, on like the beach where they are, and they like stand up, and TYSON is scared, and Percy is like calming him down. You can see him like calming him down and telling him everything is going to be okay, when he's panicking because he's scared of all of the like ghosty people that are Clarisse's ghost people showing up, and he calms him down before he goes to talk to Clarisse. And so like it's an educated guess that Clarisse is like, I don't want a Cyclops on my ship. And he's like, I will tear your head off of your body if you tell me that I can't bring my brother along. And so it's just, that whole storyline is going to be really good. It'd be a really good storyline for people in general to watch, especially kids, to get like some input of a storyline telling them not to judge people because they look differently, even if you are like told that you're supposed to judge them, or you're not supposed to like them, or they're scary or they're bad. that might not actually be scary and bad if you actually get to know them. And especially considering that TYSON, you know, he helps them a lot with Polyphemus and with the ship, even though the ship blows up. He helps a lot with, like, the ship and stuff. He's the reason why they get away from Luke on his ship and everything. There's a lot of things that happen that TYSON helps them with. And if he wasn't there, none of that, who knows how they would have gotten out of those situations. But either way, TYSON just being TYSON, oh my goodness. I just love TYSON so much. He's so sweet. Yeah. He's my autistic child. And and he's just very sweet, and watching him with Percy is a very sweet sort of thing, because some of my favorite scenes are always them in the books, because TYSON is always on Percy's side. As always, and he's somebody that, because he's more like because they talk about him as if he's like a higher level autistic, where you would have more developmental like delays with being able to communicate and things like that than like a lower level autistic like me. He is somebody that is more like, the way he talks about things is just like more simple minded, I guess, in the best way, like how you would talk to like a kid about something, as opposed to like somebody like my age. And so whenever him and TYSON are talking about these like scary and dangerous things, they're still talking about scary things. Like, I think it's in Bad the Labyrinth where he goes to TYSON and tells him about the like nightmares he's been having about Luke and all that kind of stuff. And he's like the only one that he really tells about things. There's a scene like that in Titan's Curse too, where he goes to tell him about some of the stuff that's happened. And TYSON, even though people talk about like disabled people like we don't know what we're doing or something, but TYSON is there still giving him advice and like helping him, and is a really important person in Percy's life, because he's somebody he can go to always and just talk about whatever is going on. He doesn't have to worry about, like, it's one of the only people, honestly, that he doesn't have to hide anything from. He can tell him about the stuff that's going on with Luke and everything else at camp, when he usually doesn't tell people everything. Because TYSON's like that trusted person with him that he knows he won't say anything to anybody else, because he just cares a lot about him. And it's just really sweet to see him have somebody like that. And I'm excited to see how Daniel and Walker come across on screen, because Daniel, the trailer for the movie that you watched, he's just such a TYSON person that it makes a lot of sense. That after just watching the trailer of it, what is that movie called?
Do you remember? I forgot. Yeah.
I can't remember, but it looked like a really good movie. I just am weird and don't watch anything. This thing has happened with me where, when I was dissociating for every second of my life, I used to watch TV shows and movies and read books like way too much. Like, I would read them constantly. Like, I would read a book in one day, and that was like completely like normal for me to read a book in one day. And I used to I would just be obsessively watching stuff, because that was my way of like dissociating from reality. And so now that I don't want to do that, I'm like, I don't want to watch things anymore that aren't fake, that are like not real. Now that I don't want to do that, I spend more time watching like YouTube videos about real life events and like documentary kind of things and stuff. I still obviously love books and love media and stuff, but it takes a while for me to actually watch something new now. So I haven't watched the movie that he was in, but the trailer of it, he was really good, and it was very like TYSON.
Did originally want a disabled actor to play TYSON, and we're basically just like open to whatever the performance is going to be.
Yeah, like I always will wish that TYSON could be played by an autistic actor, but I will also give, like, I don't say this to give like the show an out. I wish that they would have done that, but it's also one of those things that you don't know, like, if he is. And this thing is like one of the things that bothers me about social media the last few years or so, ever since 2020 really, is that people understand the concept that if you have like a marginalized identity, that if you play a role, that your marginalized identity will like bring something to the role that you otherwise wouldn't bring. And like people just understand the idea of like wanting to engage in like media or content or whatever made by people like that, instead of just by like normal, whatever, quote unquote normal people that are fine, like the way that those, like the people that usually get attention like that. But it's turned into this thing where like people are like forced, a lot of times they like force people to like say things publicly before they're ready, because they like have that idea of like, oh, this is like what you're supposed to want, but like there's a middle ground there between like watching and only liking people that are like straight white like cis people, and then like forcing somebody to tell you things about themselves that they're not ready necessarily to tell you, because they feel like they have to get you off their back, because you don't know everything about that person. Like I forget his name, the actor who was in WandaVision, he's been in other things. I think his name is Kit Connor. Might be remembering his name wrong, because that's also the name of somebody that's in the Heartstopper show. I think he was in the Heartstopper show. Anyway, one of the actors in the show Heartstopper, which is a comic basically about two boys in a romantic relationship. One of the actors had to like tell everybody that he was bisexual, and they literally he had to out himself, because people were like starting this whole thing online of being like, oh, they cast somebody like a straight person to play this character, and so he had to say like, I'm not straight, when he wasn't ready to tell anybody about it, because they like forced him from all of that talk happening. And so I will say, like, I don't want to force anyone on the show to say anything that they don't want to say. And so I don't know, like, this is a TV show that's that was, the two executive producers are both disabled. So I don't want to just think that nobody else in the casting crew would be too. And so I want to at least give like them time to talk about stuff like that, if they would want to talk about stuff like that. That being said, if they're not, I would always wish that there could be somebody that is, even if it's not TYSON, somebody else who is cast. I would want somebody to be, because the entire every character is disabled, literally everybody. There's no character that is like a human person in this world that is like one of the stars, that is one of the kids anyway, that isn't disabled. So I hope that they can do that, but also I understand it's one of those hard things where I understand what Hollywood is like, and that any of the kids that are trying to do acting, it would be hard for them to, I know they shouldn't be like this, but it just is. That if you tell people that you have like ADHD or autism or dyslexia or whatever in real life, that you might not get as many roles, because Hollywood is like that. They don't care about children anyway, but they especially, even when you're an adult, they don't want you to almost have like more needs. Yeah. And so that is always a thing with Hollywood, is like, I want people to tell us that they have other disabilities going on that wouldn't be obvious just by looking at them, because they actually want to tell us, not because they feel like they have to, or they're being forced to, because that does have an effect on somebody's life. And when you're telling people things like that, you should be able to decide you want to do it when you want to do it. Like, that goes for everybody. But that's just one of those things. Like, I didn't tell anybody that I was asexual or autistic for many years. I decided to tell people when I wanted to. Nobody made me do it. I like picked and choose who I wanted to say. And so I just want anybody else to have the same choice, I guess, is my point with that. But I will say that I do always wish that TYSON could be played by an autistic actor. But I will also acknowledge that being on a show like this would probably be challenging.
Yeah, especially with like some of the stuff that TYSON deals with are like explosions and water, and yeah, it's a lot.
And also like That being said, though, some of the kids on the show could be autistic, and we just don't know.
True.
And so it's like, it's not like we exactly are aware of that all the time. I didn't know that I was until like 2022, when I was like 37, was when I was like sure about it, where I was like, yeah, no, I definitely am. Okay, I understand now. Just like hearing things that autistic people do, and then remembering things that like my dad would do, and realizing that I do a lot of those things too. It was like the day that I like turned off the lights in my house and realized that made me relax, and I was like, oh, I guess I really am. Because I literally like felt my muscles in my body relax, and then I like lay down and felt really tired because I was finally relaxing. I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna keep the lights off all the time now, except for when I have to absolutely have them on. But it took a while for me to be sure about that stuff. And so I say that, but at the same time, there could be people like that working on this show, and we just don't know, because we don't actually walk around with like your diagnoses from the DSM-5 like stamped on your forehead.
True.
You just don't do that. But either way, I'm really the like one leak, spoiler, whatever, that I saw was having to do with the scene with TYSON, and that made me so mad. I was so mad that I heard the audio from that scene. I was like, that's one of my favorite scenes, because it's one that has to do with TYSON. I didn't want to hear it for the first time as like a stupid audio and really bad like audio quality on a TikTok video, when I didn't even realize that it was even like a scene from one of the spoilers, until I heard them say a line and realized that it was a line that I remembered straight out of the book. And I was like, why? Like, this is not how I wanted to see any of this, or like hear any of this. I wanted to see it for the first time in a trailer or on the show or something. I already feel like myself getting ready to like defend TYSON, because his like face stuff is going to be like fully like him adding like the eye is going to be fully CGI.
Yeah.
That was one of those things that I was glad they did, though, with Daniel, where they had him film without any of that the whole time, where he could just like be himself, because it would be really distracting to try to film and have like a giant eye on your head, or like, you know, like the equipment and stuff they would use to do CGI stuff like that. I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Yeah.
They overall are making good decisions like that, because I also like the fact that Tamara, who plays Thalia, is British, and they're letting her keep her accent. Especially because in season 3, I desperately need like Percy to start yelling things at her in a fake British accent.
Yes.
When they're fighting. Like when they're fighting during Capture the Flag, I need him to start yelling at her about like beans on toast or tea or something. That would be so funny. But either way, it's just, I'm glad that they're like doing things like that to keep the actors like as comfortable as possible, so that they can just focus on doing a good job in the roles. And because that's all that really matters. Who cares that Thalia is now British? That just means that Jason's going to be British one day, and that's really funny to think about. That's just fun to imagine Jason being British too. That's immediately what I saw people being like, does that mean Jason is British? That also means Jason is black. That's fucking great. But either way, what is some of the other, I'm trying to remember everything that happens in this book, but the Hermes stuff. That's like one thing with Hermes, is I always remember when we first talked about it, that you were like describing the scene where Hermes is gaslighting Percy at the very end of the book, and my face, I just turned into like looking like I want to punch him, which I did.
Yeah.
And so I think that like you kind of have to have Hermes be like the ultimate enabler, because that's why Luke's like that, at least partly. And so I really want them to have that scene at the end where he shows up at camp and is telling Percy like, oh, it's your family. You have to always love your family. And you always have to take care of your family. Blah, blah, blah. You can never turn against your family. Your family tried to murder me. Like 3 times by this time. Like, he tried to murder him last year. He tried to murder him twice. When just in the last week, Like, I'm pretty sure that Percy can just be like, you know what, fuck you. Like, I don't know. Absolutely not. That's not right. And, like, I will say that Rick Riordan is definitely, and Becky is somebody that knows that. Like, they're writing Hermes like that to make, like, a pretty freaking obvious point. If you know what to, like, look for with that kind of stuff. They're making him be like that to kind of show, like, the antithesis person. Because when he's telling Percy, like, oh, you should just, like, always defend and help your family no matter what, after everything that already has happened just in those 2 books. I feel like even if you don't have, like, a life like us, you would read that scene and be like, ew. No.
Yeah. It's like,
why would I do
who
that?
your family is, dude? The family
Luke just tried to eat Annabeth and Grover. Like, he literally wanted to have them get eaten by monsters and have Percy watch as the last thing he did before he killed him. I think that you can just be like, oh, it's just family. You just have to always forgive them.
Yeah.
That's one of those. And I will say, some of my favorite stuff is how Rick and Becky, for that matter, have used Percy as, like, stand-ins for, like, this is what I want you to think. And a lot of stuff like that happen when he's talking to Hermes throughout the book. We haven't gotten to it yet, but one of my favorite things like that in The Last Olympian is when Hermes is like, the gods have been around for thousands of years. Do you think that they can just change? And Percy, yep. Yeah, you can. You can definitely change. He doesn't even think about it. He's just like, yeah, you can. So, let's go.
I've had enough time to.
Yeah. And I'm like, those things were, like, I talk sometimes about how it bothers me when I can tell when, like, a writer or an author, whoever, is putting things into the story where they're acting out of character. Those are scenes where I can tell what the author is doing, but they make me really happy because I'm like, oh, you're just, like, writing in scenes that I know is meant to, like, teach kids about what they should be willing to put up with and what they shouldn't. And that's one of those things of, no, you shouldn't just be told, like, oh, because that person is related to you, you should just put up with everything they do because it's family and it's blood and no. And that is why Percy is like, and also that people can change. That, like, it doesn't matter how long things have been going on and how fucked up everything is. Like, that's just, like, my life story anyway, but it's true. Like, my family is outrageously fucked up on both sides. And, like, when I learned about, like, a little bit of, like, my ancestry, it just, like, it goes on like that forever. Like, for as many generations as I could, like, look up online, it was just always, like, bad. It's, like, at least goes back, like, 3 generations of just, like, bad things happening. And so it just went on, like, forever. And I decided, like, what if we don't do that anymore? Could you maybe not? And like, it took a little bit, but it's definitely not like that anymore.
Yeah.
Not at all. And so until, like, the first person is like, hey, what if we stop? Have we thought about that before? Could we just maybe stop? Until you are the one that does that, you'll never know, like, what's going to happen. And so that's basically Percy in these books, is he's just the one that's like, how about no? Like, how about I don't give you excuses for abandoning your children for their entire lives because it would be hard for you? And, like, how about I also don't give your serial killer son excuses because he's sad about his mommy to be a serial killer and all that kind of stuff too. Like, that's the overall story. And so in Sea of Monsters, setting up Hermes as somebody that is the ultimate enabler, that is trying to convince Percy to be nicer. And I feel like these sort of scenes will especially feel disorienting watching the season, because physically watching, like, someone like Charlie try to kill everybody, and it is going to be a lot for people to, like, physically watch. And so to like physically watch him do that, and then when they get back to camp to have Hermes be like, oh, but you have to forgive him, and oh, he's upset because of what happened with me and his mom, and you can't be too hard on him because he's just upset about these things, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, we just watched him try to like eviscerate him alive. I don't care. It's just a lot harder to feel that way about people when you actually like physically have to watch them do those things. It's just going to be more difficult overall, and especially whatever is in the flashbacks, like those are also going to be likely a lot for whatever happened between him and Thalia, because Becky said things on threads before that gave me this overall idea, and it just like makes sense to me in my head that Luke would see the way I look at Luke with his whole like revenge, violent filled kamikaze mission that ends with Thalia dying. That whole thing where he kept fighting everything and everyone and caused the Cyclops thing to happen the way that it did, and caused them to be laid at camp where Thalia felt like she had to sacrifice herself and all that kind of stuff. Not only is it interesting to think of that, like, did she sacrifice herself because she didn't think that Luke would do it? Or did she sacrifice herself because she's like a Zeus kid and felt like it was her responsibility, or both? But either way, it's just the fact that like Luke is the oldest one. He really should be the one doing things like that, but she's somehow the one that ended up doing it. It's curious that ended up happening that way overall. But it's also a thing of like, the way I explain that kamikaze mission that he's on is that I feel like he's fighting all of these monsters to try to like create this crazy situation to try to force his dad to save him. I think he's like mad and he's trying to force the gods to like intervene and save them, and is like, it's literally like a kid trying to get attention from their parent. And so I think he's just trying to force them to step in and do something when the gods are known to not do those sort of things. And then it ends with Thalia dying. And so in Luke's mind, I think that he would feel like betrayed by the gods, that they didn't step in to save her, or that Zeus like couldn't save her at the very end, and completely ignore the complete total like responsibility that he has in creating that situation in the first place. I think he would just blame them and feel like betrayed by them, that they somehow weren't able to save her. And I also wonder if he would feel betrayed by her for sacrificing herself like that and like leaving him without her now. It's like it could be possibly both of those things at the same time. But that's why those flashbacks are so interesting to me. Like, I desperately want Grover to understand that it wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
Sweetheart. Like, it was not your fault, you sweet little baby child. It was who looked like 9 years old at the time. It was definitely Luke. He was like 15 or something. 14, 15, something like that at that age. He was the oldest one. He definitely should have been the one like taking responsibility for things instead of being like, oh yeah, it was Grover's fault because he got lost.
Yeah. You know, I wonder, like, they changed the outcome of the quest in the first season. Mm-hmm. What do we think about the outcome of the quest in this season? Because the outcome is, like, Percy's not the person who gets to bring home the fleece and get the glory. And I feel like him and Clarisse having that moment needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that one of the, like, filming things that we did see that I think about all the time when it comes to, like, this, how the season's going to end, that freaks me out, is that ending scene where, like, everyone is there, including Luke and Sally. Mm-hmm. And so you can guess, because everybody is there, that it's when they, like, get back. But one of the things I did write down that we haven't brought up yet was one of the things I brought up when we were reading Sea of Monsters, is because I was trying to think of places where, like, Allison or, like, Chris or both could be where they're not, like, in the book, to, like, add in scenes. And one place I thought of was when they're on Polyphemus's island, if they're, like, waiting for them when they leave and just, like, kidnap quote unquote like kidnap them or whatever as soon as they leave, instead of them getting all the way back to land before they like pop up and as like the worst surprise ever when suddenly Luke is just there. Because the way it happens in the book, from what I remember anyway from last year, was like they get back to land and then Luke is there, and Percy gives the fleece to Clarisse and she leaves like right before Luke shows up, and he basically like lets Luke take him, because Luke thinks that he has the golden fleece, because the whole part of Sea of Monsters of like Luke's overall plot is that he's trying to get the golden fleece back so he can use it to bring back Kronos. And so he wants to steal it from them when they get back to land, and they do all the hard work for him, which is a theme he has where he wants other people to do things for him that he doesn't want to do, and then can take it, bring back Kronos, and then kill everyone in camp and then kill all the gods. But instead, like, he doesn't realize until they're already on the ship that Percy's already given it to Clarisse, and she's already like gone at like the airport or something by that point. And there's at least like the hope that she will get away and be able to get back to camp before any one of Luke's people like finds her. But I'm assuming that they'll probably do things a little bit differently on the show. I still like the idea of Percy wanting Clarisse to take the golden fleece back, and I do hope that she still gets to do that kind of thing since it is her quest. I want her to be able to finish her quest the way that she should, where she's the one that gets to put it on like Thalia's tree and everything. But considering that like Sally was also in that scene, that confrontation with Luke is likely going to be more intense than it is in the books because of it. That's part of the stuff of them trying to match the how Titan's curse is. And that's something like there are episodes of this that we've been doing of me in like May of last year when we had only been doing it for like a month and a half, of me saying like they're gonna have to explain how Luke in Titan's curse is somebody who's willing to kidnap Annabeth and physically torture her for an entire week. And so they have to show something to us in Sea of Monsters to make that in like an understandable leap that he would be somebody that would be willing to do something like that. And so I'm sure that the ending part is going to be even more like brutal for him, like on his end, like the things that he's trying to do or like threatens to do, especially if somebody like if the character like Allison is somebody that's like watching camp and stuff, that would be even scarier because she could be watching and doing things more there than they're even aware of. Just little things like that, that would be more scary. And especially the whole fact that like Sally is there overall, it feels like she's there because they're threatening Percy to be like, if you don't come with me and give me the golden fleece, we're going to do something to your mom. And it is one of those things that, like, I don't know why they, in the books, I can understand why, because it's a children's book. But when you're thinking about it in the course of, like, the show, it is a thing of, like, it is kind of, like, this weird thing that Luke is a monster, but he never does anything to, like, any of the other, like, parents or family that are connected to these kids that he hates. And he would. If he wasn't being written in, like, a children's book series, he would. And so Luke is somebody that would threaten Sally to get what he wants out of Percy because she's his ultimate trump card. If you try to hurt his mom, he might actually like kill you. But also he will, if he can't kill you, he will do whatever you say because you're not going to hurt his mom. That's just not something that is going to happen. And so her being there just makes me wonder if something like that will happen with Luke to kind of show like how far gone he is, I guess. And it's just one of those things of some of these things that happen in the books, I feel like people just don't spend enough time really thinking about it, like that Luke that whole season is just waiting for them to come back so that he can steal the golden fleece and bring back Kronos right then and there. He doesn't care if Thalia dies. He's perfectly fine with her dying. because he would rather bring Kronos back instead. And like, so even if Thalia would come back, he was planning on killing her anyway if she doesn't join him. But either way, like, just that whole thing that's what he's trying to do. That whole book is just, he's literally just waiting for them to come back, and so he doesn't want to hurt them too bad before they get back. Just why I wonder if they'll have like Allison or somebody like that show up when they're on Polyphemus's island, because Luke would know that that's where they were going to end up. And he knows like the longitude and latitude like lines of where they're going, because that's one of those things that's scary about him in the beginning of the book, that he knows all these things from like the prophecy and stuff that they get when they're still at camp and everything. And so that's kind of those things that I'm sure it's one of those things, like, it's hard to really say what it will be at the end, because we don't know about the things that happen between then and the end that we don't know about yet, because we don't know what they've changed. There's a lot of things that they could change, and it's honestly fun, like, watching and seeing the things that they've changed. It was really fun seeing that kind of stuff in the first season, and seeing how it, like, made everything work better, where I didn't care about any of the changes that they made, because I felt like it made the story work better overall. Even if they were slightly different from the books, I don't care about that in that way. I don't need the books to happen exactly how they happen in order for it to be good.
Yeah. I think that's like the only thing. It's hard to imagine them changing too much from the second half, like the closing act, so to speak, of the season, because there's so much action packed into it. It's more like, how into detail are they gonna get? That's really where the question is. So, like, how long is the siren scene really gonna be? Well, people have talked about it a lot, so it could potentially be a big chunk of an episode, or it could just be one really dramatic scene.
It likely would just be like one part, like one scene. It's like how, and like, we say that now because we haven't actually watched it, but like, it being only like one scene doesn't mean that it doesn't have like doesn't have like a big impact on you watching it. And also, it's just like a really satisfying scene to watch overall on the show. Like, the chair scene is only one scene too, when Percy is like hyperventilating, telling Annabeth that he's fine, even though he looks like he's about to cry, and she's like panicking about him dying. That's only one scene too, but it's really fucking great. And so the siren scene is only going to be like that one scene. It's probably not going to be that long, in the same way that the chair scene isn't that long, but it still is a really impactful scene. It doesn't have to be a long time in order for it to work, but it does mean that people think about that part of the book as just that scene is what most people think about. And so it does mean that there's other things that they could try to like add on around that part that kind of fits the overall story of what that scene really is. Because really what that scene really is Annabeth thinking that she's like above, like wanting to know what her like biggest dream of what she wants, and like the depths of her soul is, only to like end up almost killing herself and Percy many times, where like he has to take her really like deep into the water to get her to stop finally trying to get away from him, and almost drowns herself and also him in the process, because she's trying to, and the thing she's running towards, which I'm assuming is like why Athena is in this season, is when she's running towards her dad and Athena and Luke, like on like the island where the sirens are, and so that's like a heavy kind of like thing to talk about, that her biggest dream is like her family getting along, and like her being the one that like is the architect for like Olympus and things like that, but more to the fact, it's just like everyone getting along when none of those people get along. Much less, like, they don't get along independently from each other, much less all together. And so it is just like that's a heavy thing to like bring up. And so I'm hoping that they add in other scenes with like Clarisse and TYSON and Grover and whoever else, to kind of add in other scenes to kind of help like counteract some of that heavy stuff with like something else that's not quite so heavy. In the same way that like the scenes with, it's one of those things, like the scenes with Ares and Grover are some of the best scenes of season 1. When they're at the diner, those scenes are amazing. Like that episode was when I felt like I was like ascending to another like dimension of existence, because the writing and directing and acting and everything in that episode is so good. And going between Percy and Annabeth at Water World, and then Ares and Grover just like without even trying, just manipulating him at every single turn, and Ares not even realizing it because he thinks he's so much better than Grover. Those scenes between the two of them are so good, and those were not even something that I even thought about, like that I would even have thought would happen, or that I even would think about before we watched the season. And those are some of the best scenes of the entire season. Yeah. And so that's why doing these things is like hard, because I'm like, I don't know what scenes they're gonna like pull out like that are gonna be really fun, because it challenges the actors and they get to do things that they usually don't get to do.
Yeah. What
there
the
could be
fandom's
anything.
been collectively joking about is there's a still of Aryan in this like harness thing, and we're like, wait, how is Grover doing this kind of fight scene where he's jumping with like a sword or something? And so there actually is going to be some really cool scenes with him that we're not even aware of yet.
Yeah. They said, like, Leah has said that Walker and Aryan's, like, fight scenes, they get to, like, actually fight in a way that they couldn't in season 1 when they were too young. And so they're both, like, they were both really excited about doing that, and I'm sure it was really fun for them to film stuff where they got to do more stunts and just fight more now that they're not, like, now that Walker's not 13.
Yeah.
And like Grover in season 1 is still like kind of more too innocent to be like fighting yet. He hasn't gotten like the confidence yet that he gets in season 1 to want to like actually fight like Polyphemus and whoever else he's fighting. Who knows? Maybe him and Clarisse get in a fight.
Yeah.
They could. Like, one of the things about the book that I think is always so funny is how Clarisse at the end like almost ruins everything because she's doing the Odysseus thing. And that's like those things that I say, like, I love seeing when Rick Riordan is making those points, because I know what he's trying to point out and I like that I'm knowing what he's pointing out, that and at the end of his book he has Clarisse be the one like doxing herself at Polyphemus, and everybody else is like, shut up! Like, stop yelling at him. He's going to find us. He's going to be able to follow the sound of your voice to get back to our ship, and you're going to ruin us getting away from him without having to fight him again, because Percy has like 17 breakdowns during that part about not wanting to hurt him. And it is like she's seen as like being in the wrong in that scene for doing that. And in the Odyssey, Odysseus is like, come and find me. I am this white man. Like, come and get me.
Of Troy. Yeah.
And so it's just such a different, it's the same thing, but it's shown in such a different way. That's just like Rick and Becky being like, Odysseus needs to calm the fuck down. Like, what are you doing? You're not this big and bad person. What are you doing? What are you doing? Just like yelling at a Cyclops who you just blinded. That's like one of the things about this series that I really hope they can somehow get that across, and I'm sure they will. I was saying that when we were reading, when we originally were listening to Epic and stuff, I remember saying that it was like weird listening to something that like liked the gods.
Yeah.
and was like, Odysseus was doing the things that he does in the Odyssey, but nobody was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And because that's like the Percy Jackson version of the Odyssey was calling him out constantly and being like, what's wrong with you, sir? Like, Percy in that book constantly is thinking about, like, I don't know why Odysseus did this. Why did Odysseus hurt Cyclops? Why did he hurt Polyphemus? If somebody blinded me, I would be really mad at them too. I would also hate them. Like, why would he do that to somebody? And and it's just thinking about like, why would he do this stuff to like whatever he did to Cersei, and he's just thinking about him throughout the book as like, not now that he's doing the same stuff that Odysseus is doing, he doesn't understand why he made those decisions, because they're ones that he would never make himself. And it's just a really nice way of looking at that stuff, instead of being like, he's an amazing hero. He's like, no, he's a jerk. And like, there's a middle ground. You definitely like don't hate Odysseus after reading Sea of Monsters, but you definitely don't think that he's like a perfect person either.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that calls him out, just like in the overall like course of the narrative of the book / TV show. And I'm sure that there will be things like that again in this season too, because it just kind of naturally comes up. It's gonna be weird seeing like Scylla after reading Cersei.
Yeah.
But I am really excited to see those scenes, because they look wild. Just like the poster that I saw the poster, I'm like, that is what the Odyssey is supposed to look like. Thank you. Thank you, like, team of this show, for finally making like what the Odyssey is really supposed to look like. It's supposed to look crazy. I did want to say is one of my favorite scenes that is like this scenes that usually nobody else cares about. One of my favorite scenes overall in Percy Jackson is in this book when Percy talks to Chiron after Luke tries to kill everybody. And Chiron shows up to like bail him out and everything. One of my favorite scenes is when they're talking about the prophecy. And Percy is asking Chiron about it, and he's telling him like, Annabeth told me that the gods want to kill me. And he's asking Chiron about the prophecy and everything, and like, should I do it? And things like that. And that's one of my favorite scenes, because Chiron goes out of the way to tell Percy, like, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. Like, if you don't want to do the prophecy, then you're not going to do it. And that's the end of it. Like, the gods can be mad at you about that, but they can't make you do this. They can't make you do something against your will. And I always get like bothered whenever people say that Percy is a chosen one, because he's not. Like, if you want to be like literal, like he literally chose to do it, yes, but usually the chosen one trope is like, you are chosen and you have no choice. Like, little baby Harry Potter just killed Voldemort by existing. He didn't get to like choose anything. He just became like this person. And
no, according to J.K. Rowling's lore, Voldemort chose him by trying to kill him. Like,
she's stupid. But like, either way, like, he doesn't get like a choice in the matter of like whether he should, if this is something he wants to do. Like, the wizarding world is thinking about him as the chosen one for all those years when he doesn't even know who they are. Where like, when he shows up, he's like an instant celebrity, and everyone, that's like one of the wildest things about those books is that everyone he talks to him as if like, you're gonna save everybody one day. Like, no pressure. No pressure or anything. I'm 11. And you just told me that one day I'm going to like save the entire world, that everybody that I meet in this world is going to die if I don't figure out a way to save them. And I am in 6th grade. Thank you everybody for telling me this right away. And that I have like no choice at all in this matter. He can't say no. If he said no, like, I think the entire wizarding world would murder him or something. They would do something really bad to him. Like, he never got a chance. He never got a choice in any of it. It was just like, this is just what you're supposed to do. And that's what it usually is like in stories like that, when there is like a chosen one or whatever. It's like, you have to do this whether you like it or not. Like, Aang in Avatar is the same kind of thing. He is the Avatar. Yeah. And like, yes, he does run away and disappear for many years because he doesn't want to be the Avatar. But he's like shown that's like to be like the wrong thing when he does that, because all these bad things happen because he wanted to run away and get away from everybody wanting him to be the Avatar. But like, he doesn't get a choice in whether he is that or not. He just is. And so one of my favorite things that makes Percy Jackson very different from other things is that like, Percy literally like has to decide. Like, the first 3 books is him deciding whether he wants to do it or not. And in the end, he doesn't do it because of the glory to like the Western world or glory to like the gods or anything like that. He does it because he can't let Nico do it. He's like, I can't make a little kid go through this, so I'm just going to do it instead. But, like, that's why this scene with Chiron is one of my favorite scenes in the book, because Chiron basically tells him, like, if people get mad at you about this, I will fight them. Like, he doesn't use those words, but he basically says it. Like, they cannot do anything to you. If you say no, if you don't want to do this, they can't do anything. They can't make you. Like, you have to decide what you want to do. And that's just it's just really refreshing to have a main character who, even though there's all these prophecies about him, he still gets to decide what he wants to do with his life. He decides he wants to do the prophecy after Thalia leaves, and he can't leave it up to Nico, and so he does it. That's the way that Percy would decide to do something like this, is like, I'm going to protect this younger kid from going through the same kind of things that I went through, because if I could stop this, I can't not stop it. That's a way that somebody like Percy would decide to be like the prophecy kid. But I just really like the fact that they give him, like, the option that for many books, it's like him thinking about it. Like, do I want to do this? It would be very different if Chiron was like, yeah, you just have to do this stuff, and when you turn 16, the world is going to end and you might die. And so the gods are threatened by you and want to kill you now as like a 13, almost 14-year-old, because they're afraid that you're going to turn against them. But instead it's said in a way of, like, it's not right that the gods feel this way about you. Here are things that happened before you were ever born, and you can decide what you want to do, and if the gods get mad at you, I'll fight them. That's basically Chiron's, like, place in that camp anyway, is like, he protects all those kids from what the gods would do to them if he wasn't there. And so I just really like that scene, and I really want it to be in it, because I really love Chiron and Percy. I like, even the scene at the beginning is sad, but it's kind of, like, sweet to see, like, Annabeth crying about Chiron leaving, because Chiron's, like, her dad figure too. And she's like, you can't leave. What's going to happen at camp if you leave? And it just, like, because she gets so upset, it just makes you even more upset, realizing what's happening and how wrong it is that they're kicking Chiron out of camp just because Kronos is his father. Mm-hmm. It's like, he didn't actually do anything. Sometimes your dad is just an evil little bitch. You didn't actually, do anything. You just happen to be, like, related to them somehow, but you're not like them. That was one of those things that always bothered me growing up, is, like, seeing people, like, at school judge me sometimes because they didn't like my dad. And I was like, I don't like him either. how that stuff is. Like, just because your dad is, or parent, I guess I'll say, is a bad person doesn't mean that you actually are. Most of the time you're not. Sometimes you are, but at least a good amount of the time you're not. You're not anything like your mom.
No, that's not true.
Or your dad.
I don't know. I don't think that's true. But also, Rick, I mean, he beats us over the head with this message, not just in this book, in the next one with Zoe. And so it's kind of like we get it, Rick. You don't like one of your parents, or something like that. You're trying to say, I'm not like my family.
Yeah. Even, like, even how Percy thinks about Poseidon.
Yeah.
Like, they wrote that scene in the first season of the show where Percy, when he's supposed to be praying to Poseidon, but he's praying to his mother instead, and it's like praying to Sally. Like, that's like one of those things that when the episode first aired, that I saw on social media of people being like, I aspire to be as good of a mom as Sally Jackson, whose 12-year-old son prayed to her instead of the God that is his father, prayed to her when he thought she was dead because of how much he loved her. And it's like, yeah. That's all you really need to know about that. And so even before we get to all those other things, Rick is very much like, my mom was great. The end.
Yeah.
It is like, it's always a mix between him and Becky in some way, but still, they very much have like the overall story. Like, if you're parents, you can write how you want parents to be. And the only way you can do that is by counteracting and showing ones that aren't good. To show like the difference of, this is not how I want anyone to treat their children. And the stuff, at least especially with Zoe, also goes in line with all of the other mythology stuff too, with Heracles and all that good stuff in that book. But what was I going to say? Oh, about the 20th anniversary stuff. Becky posted this thing where she was just saying basically how they feel about how people are getting attacked right now. And it's good to read if you haven't read it already, just to like make their stance very clear that they don't stand for any of that. They will be there to try to help people that are in the potentially being erased right now, or killed, or just forgotten about. It's just always very good to have to do that. She said that on that day when more people were paying attention to them on purpose, so that more people would see it.
Yeah, we love that.
Yeah.
It's like literally right underneath her, thanks for all the 20th anniversary notes.
And I will say, like, just thinking about that, we talked about this a little bit on that Saturday, but it is like a wild thing to think about that now that I am like their age. It's one of the weirdest things about growing up, for people that are younger watching this, is that, at least for me, one of the weirdest things about growing up is like thinking about people that I knew that were my age when I was growing up, and thinking how they seemed like so much more like adult or something at that age. And it just makes me think about like the age that I am and like how I feel about certain things. Like, thinking about like when my mom was 40 was when my parents were getting divorced. That was like right after they got divorced. And it's like wild to think about how my mom already had 2 kids, and that were both teenagers, and had gone through all of that, just like a literal horror movie in real time, at that point, and had another like 30 years of life after that. And so one of the things with Rick and Becky that I think is interesting to think about now that I'll be 41 in January, is to think about how, you know, the Lightning Thief came out 20 years ago. That was when they were 41. Rick had started putting out books. He put out his first like mystery book series in 1997. And so that was when he was like 36, I think, when he put those out. And so he was in no way a published author until he was like 36 or 37. And even when he started putting out the Percy Jackson books, it took until like Titan's Curse came out, he said, before like it became like this big thing. He talked about in some of the videos he did for the Percy series account that the first like book sightings he did for the first book, there would be like one singular child there, and that would be the only kid that would be there. And then 2 years later, when he came back, or a year later or something, there would be more people, and then after that, it became so successful that there would be a ton of people there waiting for him. But either way, like, they didn't really gain like real success until they were like 43, 44. And so either way, when they put out the Lightning Thief book, they were 41. They already had 2 kids. Their 2 kids were already like somewhat old. They weren't like that old, but they were probably both under the age of 10 or something. But they were still like, they weren't little kids. They were old enough that he was telling the Percy Jackson series to one of his kids as a bedtime story for a couple years before he actually wrote the book down. And so they had an entire life. They had 41 years of their life being normal people, living normal lives, doing normal things, just living a normal life. Like, Rick was a teacher that taught Greek mythology that was probably one of the best teachers you could imagine. Like, Becky worked as like doing like things with like plants and things like that. They just lived very normal lives, and he wrote books as like a fun like side project thing that he never thought would turn into like their entire life. And so like that's just like a good thing for perspective for me and you, and for anyone else to think about. Like no matter how unhappy you are with your life, or you think that you're behind, or you think that you're not going to do anything. They lived 43 years basically of their life thinking that their life was going to be one way, and then suddenly these books exploded and their life has been completely different, and now they're like somewhat celebrities, and they're executive producing multiple, like working on at least 2 TV shows about these books that they put out, and they mean so many things to millions of children / adults around the world in a way that they could never have possibly ever imagined that so many people would care about them. And we do. But they spent most of their life not living that way. And I honestly think it's better for people like that to like live the majority of their life, know who you are and what you want to do and who you want to be, if something like that is going to happen to you, so that you are like more ready for it. Like they had time to like figure out how to handle their kids, like things, people knowing things about their kids and things like that. Mm-hmm. So their kids could always have privacy instead of it being happening as soon as they were born and things like that. And it's just, they made the choice to put themselves out there in a way that most people don't get. And just overall, if you're unhappy with your life, which I feel like everyone at this point, because of how just stressful and terrifying life is right now, I don't think anyone is necessarily happy. Mm-hmm. Like Congress this week is voting to basically make my job obsolete. Like I work at an insurance company where I take calls from people who have Medicaid. I only take calls from one state, and the bill is likely going to pass because they always find a way to pass these things. And when it does, there's going to be like 78,000 less people in the state that I take calls from that will have Medicaid. And so, like, what am I supposed to do with my job? Yeah. Like, not all of those people use my insurance company, but at least a good amount of them likely do. And so it's like, what is going to happen to my job? What's going to happen to those people? Like, it's very stressful right now. And so to remember people like them, when Rick put out The Lightning Thief, him and Becky did not think that they were going to become these, like, people that gave people hope, mm-hmm. that, like, wrote, like, a super diverse book series and showed, like they literally are, like, the blueprint of what, like, white authors should do when they get, like, a platform. They, like, uplift voices of people that aren't them, and they include people with diverse backgrounds into their show, but they also bring people like that into their productions that can write from their lived experience instead of them writing what they think their lived experience is like. That's exactly what you should do. They had no idea that they were going to do that. They were just living their lives. And so that's always something to keep in mind too, that no matter how bad things are now, you just never know what's going to happen. They had no idea that any of this is going to happen. Like there's no way that they thought that when they put that book out that it would lead to them having a super successful show on Disney and another one being in production right now. And whatever else they're doing that they can't tell us about. But just over the test of time, like that's what we said about J.K. Rowling. Mm-hmm. Is the same kind of thing. That J.K. Rowling, like, seemed like the biggest book series that would always, like, eclipse Percy Jackson. Like, I remember for so many years when I read these books being so annoyed that so many people read Harry Potter instead. Like, I remember I read, like, the first book, and I was like, this book series already has done everything that I wanted the Harry Potter series to do that they never fucking did. And by the time I read the first Percy Jackson book, the last Harry Potter book still had to come out. But I was like, there's been 6 books, and it never did any of the things I wanted to do that this one book did in its first book. Much less all the other books in this series that I haven't even read yet. This was in like 2010. And so over the test of time, they just kind of like were consistent and stuck in there. And just by existing and not like reneging on their morals like everyone else did, they basically just like waited until like things naturally just kind of shaked out, and they end up looking like these amazing figures that made people cry about how happy we are that they are around. Like literally, like I get comments still on that video of Rick at Pride looking like a rainbow vomited all over him, of just little kids crying about, I love you, Uncle Rick. Please never leave us, Uncle Rick. Like, one of the top comments from that video is like, I would literally kill somebody for this man. I swear to fucking God. And I was like, yeah, that's how I think most of us feel about them. And they had no idea they were doing that. And so you never know the things that you're doing, how they will positively affect people. I have to put something positive like that out there when everything is so horrible. But you really don't know. And that may be like cheesy or whatever, but you just never know. Like, I used to watch people when I was a teenager that had no idea that I was like reading their fan fiction or whatever. That meant a lot to me. Like, I would think about it when I would wake up every day, as something that would make me feel good about myself, which never happened. And those people didn't know that what was happening with me. They just knew that I liked their fan fiction, or whatever. They didn't know what that really meant, but they still did that for me. And so and I never said anything to those people because I was too afraid at that time to really say anything. And so you just never know what you just being around on the internet makes people think. Like, there's someone in your videos who thinks that you're the Fates.
Yeah, that's true.
You just never know. The last couple days I've been thinking, like, someone is cast as Zoe Nightshade right now, and they're just like waiting until they can go to Canada, if they aren't in Canada already. There's just somebody out there that has already been cast as her. There's somebody out there that's been cast as Nico and Bianca,
yeah,
because they're all in the first episode, and Artemis, for that matter, is probably going to be in the first episode too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they go with Artemis's depiction.
Yeah, it's just, either way, it feels like every time they just say anything about like, oh, we're going to start filming Titan's Curse soon, I just am like, is this real? Is this real life? Like, every time we talk about it, I'm just going to be like, is this real? Is this really happening? Am I awake? They're like my favorite, besides the end book, but still, Percy Jackson book is being adapted into a TV show in real time. Yeah. And I get to like watch it, and I have like an actual reason to talk about it for like 5 hours a week, and nobody can stop me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this is great. It also makes me like, of course, because it also makes me like weirdly nervous at the same time, because of not because of like the fandom-y stuff, but purely like, this season's gonna be hard for these kids to film. Yeah, like, I'm like, I hope because we are who we are and how we like. I said this the other day when we did one of our second episode we did last week, where we were talking about stuff with Becky. I said this then, but it was like, yeah, I do wish that we could talk about this stuff without having to focus so much on like the trauma abuse part of it, but because then we would have had easier lives. Yeah. And we wouldn't feel like we have to, but at the same time, the way that we look at this stuff is very different from how everybody else does. Like, I've said, like, one of our kids that has been watching all of our videos for at least over a year, like a year and a half at this point, there was some video we posted recently where they were like, I've never thought of that before. And I was like, you can literally never say that we ever copied anybody because I don't really see anyone saying any of the stuff that we say, not to make us sound great, but it's just, we just always look at everything very differently. But I will say that that's part of the fun with Titan's Curse, is that most people are thinking about like, what about this scene, or what about that scene, or I need this scene to be in the, and those things are still on our minds, but most of what I think about is like, are these kids going to be okay?
Yeah.
Like, this is like a intense like season to film. What about the children? Are like, I trust like this show and how they have their production set up to care about them, because they show that they do. Mm-hmm. It does make me feel every time I look at like the screenshot I took of when Becky posted something about child actors, and she just put it so simply of like, if people treated child actors like they were human, their job wouldn't be so traumatizing. And I remember I sent that to you and I was like, why is this so hard for people to understand? And I'm like, generally, like, it makes me feel like I'm losing my mind that most of us talking about child actors is literally trying to convince them that they are human.
Yeah.
But like, we literally have to do that because she's not, that was like exactly what happens. People don't treat them like they're human. That's why their job is so hard. If people actually treated them like they were human beings, being a child actor wouldn't be as difficult as it actually is. It wouldn't be traumatizing as a career as it is currently, but it is right now. And so when they are doing seasons like this, that's what we think about is like, are these kids going to be okay? Are they going to have time to like, you know, like relax or something between, or like decompress from doing these like really emotionally difficult sort of scenes? Like, I'm sure they will. But that's the kind of stuff we think about instead of what everyone else is thinking about.
Yeah.
It's like, I just can't help it. I just know how hard this stuff is. We've like lived through some of that stuff actually in our actual lives. And so we know how hard it is to even like pretend to act like this. I will say that this show is like one of the very few that actually cares.
Yes,
about how their
that's
child
true.
actors feel while they're going through it. And so I'm sure that they'll have, like, Rick and Becky entirely talk too much about that. Like, they mention in so many interviews how worried they are about the kids and if they're okay and how they're doing and wanting to make sure that they're all right and asking their parents how they're doing and, and like, all this kind of stuff. And so I know that they'll do whatever they have to do. Like, still, one of my favorite little behind-the-scenes stories is that they took a day off of filming when they did season 1 because Walker was exhausted after doing the chair scenes because of how like emotionally exhausting doing those sort of scenes would be.
Yeah.
And so he was so tired like at the end of that night that they just took like the next day off of filming. They were supposed to film more scenes and they just didn't do it because he was too tired and they didn't want to make him do it. And it's like, yeah, this is like the one singular production in the history of Hollywood that would actually do something like that. Everyone else would be like, no, you just have to do it, child.
Yeah, just
You have to make your 15%.
Yeah. Anyways, I have to end it here because I got to get William to bed. But for Monday, we got chapters. What are we on? 12, 13. Always
13, 14, and
13, 14, 15. Yeah, we ended on 12.
and that's another
Trigger warning heavy one.
yeah, I know that Cersei being raped is somewhere in those chapters.
Yeah.
So I don't even know what to say.
We'll
If you-
continue the chapter by chapter trigger warning guide.
Yeah. If you've ever wanted to see somebody with sexual trauma get triggered in real time, just watch my face.
God.
And then you'll get to see it. It's really not fun at all. But I'm going to do it. I have to do it at this point.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into Cersei for next time, and yeah, we'll end it here.
Bye.